I have not prepared for this video at all, and I'm kind of stressing about it. I feel like so often we think about all the things we lack, all the things we don't have, all the things we're bad at. And as an introvert, I'm often overthinking. And so obviously I'm overthinking this. So many times we look at extroverts in our life, we think that it's so easy for them, right? Extroverts always get the better end of the stick. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about the things that introverts are really good at, because sometimes we're not always looking for them and we can't always see it. Now, before we get into the video, I just want to quickly introduce myself, and my name is Bridget. On this channel, I talk a lot about introverted things. I also talk about social anxiety and general anxiety, talk about the books I'm reading. So if any of that interests you, make sure you check out some of my other videos as well. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Growing up, I also suffered with social anxiety, which made my social life a lot more challenging. But when I was younger, I always remember watching shows or watching movies or reading books or even being in my classroom and looking at all the outgoing people that I was surrounded by. In movies and books and TV shows, they always highlight the character that's super outgoing, super friendly, the popular one, the one that, has a strong voice and has power. And I always craved that so much. I still do. Even after that stage, in high school, in college, we still cater to the extroverted individual. We want people to work in groups. We want people to give presentations. We want people to collaborate. We want people to ask questions. And that was always such a struggle for me. Not just because I had social anxiety, but because that's not how I work best. And if you're an introvert watching this video, I'm sure you can relate. We don't want to work in groups. We don't always have questions to ask. We take a lot of time to think. We're not always the one who wants to be loud and voice our opinion. I think so often when we think of an extrovert, we usually think they're like a hermit. They'd rather spend time alone. They're quiet or shy. They don't have a lot to say. Right? That's what we think about when we think of an extrovert. And for so long, I used to think that that's how an extrovert was. And that's how I saw myself. And it affected my confidence. It affected the way I made friends. It affected the way I work, the way I collaborate with people, the way I think about myself, and the way I think about the world. See, what introverts are really good at is thinking, sometimes overthinking. But what I mean by that is introverts have a lot of great ideas. It just takes them a while to get there. And what I didn't know for a long time is that I'm extremely good at communicating, but just not always face to face. I'm a very good writer. I'm very creative. I take a long time to think. But the people I've surrounded myself with now know that about me. They know that I'm not always going to have something to say right off the bat. And they don't pressure me to do that. I surround myself with the right people because I'm fortunate enough to do so. I know there's so many people who don't have that option. But it's important to, especially in those cases when you don't have that option, taking the time to actually tell people this is how I work. This is what's going to help me in the workplace. This is what's going to help me in whatever type of scenario that you see fit. And don't be so hard on yourself when people expect you to perform in a certain way that doesn't work for you. Another thing we're really great at is observation. And I've always thought this about myself. I used to think it was just because growing up, struggling with social anxiety and not always wanting to speak, I just became a better observer because that's how I would communicate. I'm really good at picking up on people's body language. I'm very intuitive. I'm very good at recognizing facial expressions and knowing when people need space. And that is a characteristic that most introverts, are very good at. Although you may not see this as the best quality, like so what I can observe, it's actually super helpful. I see so many extroverts in my life who, if we're in a crowded room and, we're all collaborating, we're all speaking, and people just don't know how to read the room sometimes. I get secondhand embarrassment. This happens to my husband, and I literally all the time. He'll say something without even thinking because that's how extroverts work, right? They think by speaking, by collaborating. They're not so much in their heads about things. And so he'll just blurt something out without even thinking, and I'm like, oh God, why did you just say that? Next time you think about the fact that maybe you're not always the first one to speak, or maybe you're not the loudest, just remember that you know how to read a room. And that is a skill that so many people lack. Another thing we're really good at is just relationships in general. We make very good partners, we make very good friendships, and we're also great leaders. We may not have a lot of relationships. I can definitely attest to that. I have a very small group of friends, but I keep them close to me. I know how to be a good friend, and I know how to be there for someone when they need it. I know how to give space to someone when they need it. And it's because we're so good at reading people. A very important quality to have, especially when it comes to leading, right? We have to know when our team needs us, when our team needs us for support, for taking the lead, for taking initiative, for thinking critically, for, whatever the case is. And we have that ability. I mentioned how intuitive we are as well. Knowing when someone needs space, knowing it makes us very good at interpersonal communication, which also makes us very self-aware. Another quality that, again, so many people lack. If you're an introvert watching this, you're probably thinking about all the things that you don't have, or that you lack, or that you're really bad at. Because even when someone's telling me all these things that I'm good at and, to look at my strengths, we still continue to look at our weaknesses. That is just, not only is it a part of human nature, but it's also something that us introverts often do. It's so easy to look at the weaknesses rather than the strengths. Now, one thing we hate, small talk, networking, whether it's for our advantage or just because we happen to be there and we have to communicate with certain people. Now I'm bad at that. I know I am. But I also know that I know how to have the right conversations when it matters, right? I know how to make connections because the way I communicate with people, I skip right over the small talk. I mean, the first initial introduction and whatnot, that's fine. But when I have a conversation with somebody new or somebody old, I'm going to talk about things that are important to me. I'm going to talk about things that I'm passionate about. Having in-depth conversations as opposed to surface level communication. I'm going to be bored. The person talking to me is going to be bored. I'm not going to have anything to say. I'm not going to have any good questions to ask. And so I stay away from that. I'd rather have an hour-long conversation about something interesting rather than 5 20-minute conversations of us running in circles and not talking about anything. So the next time you do have to go to a networking event, the next time you do have to go to that party that you really don't want to go to and make small talk, talk about things that interest you. If the person you're talking to isn't interested, they'll walk away or you'll walk away. You'll find a way out. So go get to the conversations that actually interest you. Sometimes it's hard to make friends because we don't want to have that awkward and annoying conversation. But once we find the people that are like us, that are interested in the same things, then we can have those great conversations. We can form those great connections. It's just a matter of getting over that awkward hump. But having those connections and having those conversations is something we are really good at. It's so easy to think about the things that we lack, our weaknesses. I find myself so often scrolling on social media, watching, a dumb TV show, reading a book, and I'm so in my head thinking about, I wish I could think like that. I wish I could look like that. I wish I could have that or be that. And I have to snap myself out of it because I start to think about what's the point of spending that time wanting it, right? I'm just making myself miserable. I'm not taking any action if I want to make a change or if I need to make a change. I'm just thinking. So yes, I'm sure that's a quality that you can relate to in yourself if you're also an introvert. But instead of spending that time thinking about what you don't have, what you lack, think about the things that you are good at. Hone in on those skills. There's something that you maybe have overlooked for so long. And when you take the time and invest the energy to really make that skill work, you can do something great. Sometimes I'm reading and I find out about someone who has started great companies, who has made great books and all these things, come up with inventions. If you actually look up online famous introverts, you will be shocked. Well, partly, because some of them are like, okay, I could have guessed that. But it's crazy to think about some of the most successful people in any walk of life have been introverts. So next time you find yourself thinking about all your weaknesses, start to look at your strengths. Or maybe start to look at things that you do in a different way. And it might change how you see yourself. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it useful as always. And I will see you next time.